All right, welcome back. This is chapter 5.2, Foundations Math 20. I'm back with my daughter again, doing some more math. So we're looking at frequency tables, histograms, and the frequency polygon. This will be a pretty quick video. All right, so let's get to this next screen. There we go, frequency distribution. So a set of intervals, so tables, graphs, usually of equal width into which raw data is organized. Each interval is associated with a frequency that indicates the number of measurements in this interval. So what does that mean? Basically a graph, right? So remember, we have some measurements on the vertical, measurements on the horizontal. So usually when we're dealing with things that happen over time, well, time starts at 0. Right, because we're not graphing all the stuff that happened in the past. That'd be a negative graph. We don't have that. Right. So from 0 times 0, moving forwards, something happens. There's a certain amount of televisions that are bought every year. That goes up, goes down from year to year, and we can graph all those changes over time. Right. So frequency distribution. So how do we organize the table or the graph into equal widths? Well, we're going to look at, we don't want to graph from 1950 to 2020 every single year how many televisions were bought. That's a lot to put on a graph. So rather what we can do is we can organize the information that maybe we look at every 10 years how many televisions were bought, and then compare those frequencies of every 10-year period. Right? So how do we set this up? Let's go to the next slide here. Okay, so here is some data about the flow rates of the Red River from 1950 to 1999. So as you can see, there is a lot of data there. Right? So we are going to create a frequency table. So what we want to do with our frequency table is I want to set up, well, how many sets of information do I want to have? So I'm going to say maybe 10, right? 10 sets of information. So we could do from like 1950 to 1959, 1960 to 1969, 70 to 79, and so on, right? So every 10 years, we're going to have 10 different intervals, right? Or how many intervals we have. So normally one of the ways to do this is we can use our range that we looked at in our last day, right? So if we look for range, how do you remember how we find the range?
The highest number and minus the lowest number?
Yeah, right, the maximum minus the minimum number. So if we look on this graph and try to find what's the highest number, well, I think the highest number for flow rate is 4,587, right? And the smallest number on our graph, I think, is 159, if I'm not mistaken.
110.
Where's 110?
Under 68.
That's 510. This one?
Yeah.
That's 510. Yeah, no. 159 in 1981. So minus 159, right? So what does that give us? Got my calculator. About 400 and something, I believe. We got 4,428. 4,428. And I'm going to divide that by 10 because I want to have 10 parts to my graph. So that gives us about 442.8. And I'm going to round this off to approximately 450. So what this does is this allows us to set up our divisions. So we're going to divide our graph from 0 to 450, 450 to 900, right? Because we have a 450 plus another 450, and then 900 plus 450 to get the next division, and so on and so on and so on. Right? So I'm going to just pull this out here. Let's pull this thing out. Okay. All right. So, oh, okay, they did 500. Okay, fair enough. We'll do 500 then. That's what's there. Right? So what we do is we set up our flow rates from 0 to 500. I'm just going to click on this bottom one here. Let's add a page. Did that add me a page? No, that didn't. Oh, no. Down here, add a page. I need to add it. Oh, there it is. Okay. So we're going to go from 0 to 500, 500 to 1,000, 1,000 to 1,500, 1,500 to 2,000, right? 2,000 to 2,500, and so on and so on and so on. All right. And then what we'll do is we'll go back to, where's that chart? Is it here? Yeah. Okay. Because we'll go back to our chart. Nope. I guess sorry, it's up further. Right there. Fix that one. No, it isn't. Go on, keep going. Where did it go? Right here? No, next one. Right there. Well, I don't know. We'll use this. It's the same data anyway. All right. So now I think you lost my frequency table. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to go through all the data and we're going to make a tick mark for everything that's between 0 to 500. Right? So we're going to go through, there's 357, so that's 1, 524, that's over 500. So we can go 500 to 1,000, there would be a check mark on there. All right? And so for each number, we'll have that in our frequency table. I'm going to just pause this and see if we can find our frequency table again.